Good morning to all of you, to Rowena Muarez, our professor, to Sir Maligaya, Ma'am Grace Ann, and Sir Isabel. Good morning po. I extend my apology before I start to all of you for not being there to actually report this topic. I am hoping and praying that uh, you you may appreciate this presentation that I am making today, or tonight rather. For the reason that hindi po ako nakaabot sa biyahe because of some personal and work loads problem, ginawa ko na lang po itong presentation na to, record ko para po sa ganun nakapag-present pa rin po ako sa inyo kahit pa paano. Okay po, my topic is all about consequences of victimization. What is victimization? Victimization is a process of being victimized or becoming a victim. Victimization is a highly complex process encompassing a number of possible elements. What are the elements of victimization? First, the primary victimization, which comprises whatever interaction may have taken place between offender and victim during the commission of the offense, plus any after effects arising from this interaction or from the offense itself. Secondly, the victim's reaction to the offense, including any change in the self-perception that may result from it. Thus, that any formal response and that she or he may choose to make to it. And lastly, the third element is the secondary victimization, which consists of any further interactions that may take place between the victim and others, including the various criminal justice agencies with whom she or he may come into contact as a result of this response, where this interaction has further negative impact on the victim. In every crime, there is a victim. But who is a crime victim? A crime victim is the person to whom harm was done, of who suffered physical or emotional loss as a result of commission of the offense. And the second one, where the person described in the paragraph A is dead already, ill or otherwise incapable of making a settlement or a statement rather, referred to in subsection, includes the spouse of any relative of that person, anyone is in law or fact the custody of that person or is responsible for the care of support of the person or any dependent of that person. In general, crime victims are those people most directly affected by crime The person who has been victimized should still be considered a victim, even if an offender is never found. Victimization often causes trauma, and depending upon the level of trauma that a person has already experienced in their lifetime, crime can be devastating. In general, victimization often impacts people on an emotional, physical, financial, psychological, and social level. Even though this report doesn't agree or not confirm with the title or specific topics given by our professor, it is best for me to describe the different consequences of victimization in this platform or classifications of victimization consequences. So now let's proceed to emotional consequence of victimization. We have 8 consequences or emotional consequences. First, shock, disbelief, and denial. Second, anger or rage. Fear or terror. Frustration, confusion, guilt or self-blame. Shame and humiliation. And lastly, the grief or sorrow. Those are the 8 emotional consequences. Let us discuss this one by one. First, victims may find it difficult to believe they have become a victim of a crime. They may even pretend that it did not happen at all. This reaction can last for a few moments, or they may be present for months and even years, meaning to say it is long lasting. It may be long lasting. It is not uncommon for victims to assume a childlike state and may even need to be cared for by others for some time. It also common for victims to feel as though the crime occurred when they were in a dreamlike state. Once the initial shock of the crime has worn off, victims may experience other emotions such as anger, fear, frustration, confusion, guilt, shame, and grief. Second, we have anger or rage. Victims may be angry with God or angry with the offender, service providers, family members, friends, and criminal justice system, or even themselves. Many victims experience strong desires for revenge or getting even. Hate may even felt by victims. These strong emotions are often disproved by the rest of society, which can leave the victim feeling like an outcast. It is certainly unjustified for victims to feel anger toward the person or people who harmed them. Now, let us talk about fear or terror. It is common for victims to feel terror or fear following a crime that involve a threat to one's safety or life, or to someone else a victim cares about. Fear can cause a person to have panic attacks if they are even reminded of the crime. Fear can last for quite some time following the commission of a crime, and under certain circumstances, it can become debilitating or also devastating. Fear or terror that becomes overwhelming is unhealthy, and victims should consult their family physician about it as soon as possible. Next, next we have frustration. Many victims are frustrated by the feeling of helplessness or powerlessness that surface when the crime takes place. This can be especially true if the victims were unable to fend off an offender, call for help, or they can't run away. After the victim, After the crime rather, victims may continue to feel frustration if they cannot access the support and information that is necessary to their healing. Next is confusion. Victims of crime may become confused if they are unsure of what actually happened, as crimes often occur quickly and are chaotic. Victims might also become confused while searching for answers to questions like, why did this happen to me? Or asking like that, or several questions, or questioning into himself. It may be possible to find out why someone else intended to hurt them. Hindi nila malaman kung bakit ba yung ibang tao ay gusto silang saktan. Next, guilt or self-blaming or sinisisi yung sarili. Blaming oneself is common. Many victims believe they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. If the victim does not have someone to blame, they will often blame themselves. For sure, because sino nga ba naman yung sisisihin mo kung ikaw lang ang nandun. Guilt is also common when no offender is found. Kung wala kang makitang offender, may guilt feeling. Later on, when reflecting upon the crime, victims might feel guilty for not doing more to prevent what happened. Lastly, some victims will experience survivor guilt. Survivor guilt means they feel guilty that they survived while someone else was injured or even killed. If a loved one is murdered, surviving family and friends may even blame the victim. Too often, society blames victim as well. Next, we have shame and humiliation. Ito yung nakakalungkot lang. Some victims blame themselves, particularly victims of sexual abuse, assault, or domestic violence. In crimes involving sexual acts, offenders often degrade the victim by making them do humiliating things. Like the victims of rape have a long-lasting feelings of being dirty and Those feelings cannot be washed away. Rather, some victims even feel self-hatred because they believe that they can no longer be loved by those who are close to them. Lastly, grief or sorrow. Intense sadness is often the most powerful long-term reaction to the crime. It is common for victims to become depressed after a crime occurred. Now, those are the emotional consequences of victimization. Some were trigger the cognitive or or mental cognitive processes of our brain or their mind. We are thinking because cognitive means it is referring to the people's capacity to think or to build a thought in their mind. Now, let us proceed to physical consequences of victimization. Yes, it is very traumatic, but of course, in any offenses, there are physical impact. At the time of the crime or upon discovering that a crime has occurred, victims are likely to experience a number of physical reactions. These reactions may include increase in the adrenaline in the body, increased heart rate, hyperventilation, shaking, tears, numbness, a feeling of being frozen, or experiencing events in slow motion, dryness of the mouth, enhancement of particular senses such as smell and fight or flight response. Walang pinag-iba yan doon sa hinabol ka ng aso. So, or para ba ikaw nakakita ng multo? Let us talk about hinabol ka ng aso na hindi natin alam. Our adrenaline increase immediately that we can climb higher or a high fence without thinking that a normal person cannot climb that in easy way as you did. That's because not only because you are under the fear of bites of the dog. Um, so the fight or flight response is that when you say fight, you are setting up a mechanism. When you are flight, you're just forgetting the problem and making something new, or you're just forgetting it. So it is also common for people to lose control over their bowel movements. Some of these physical reactions may occur immediately and others may occur after the danger has passed. Physical reaction to the crime can be so powerful that they reoccur quite some time after the crime. For example, with the victim's memory of the events. So in terms of memory, we are referring to the cognitive aspect or consequences. The loss of memory, the people how to think, that is cognitive. The physicals, the irritability, yan, yung mga yan. So, physical injuries also is the physical consequences of victimization that results from crime, and it is classified as minor like bumps, scratches, and moderate as bruises, broken bones, and severe as stabbing, gunshot wounds. Victims may also suffer a range of physical effects including insomnia, appetite disturbance, lethargy, headache, muscle tension, nausea, or decrease of libido. Some victims may be lost or lose sights or senses and may be incapacitated, mutilated. So all those physical due to some violent crimes is a consequence of the victimization. Not only the physical, we have the financial consequences. So financial consequences not only limited to crimes against property, wherein money is involved, it's also involved in robbery or the victims who maybe have money stolen or possessions stolen or damaged have been financially injured. In many cases, stolen money and prized possessions are never recovered. Understandably, this is very distressing to victims who may feel guilt, anger, and frustration if they are unable to recover a family heirloom. Of course, sino nga ba naman ang hindi magagalit, 'di ba? The financial consequences is um, as follows, or let's say the victims may certainly incur costs in the following ways. Ano ba yung mga consequences? First, repairing property or replacing possession. So, the property as it damaged or she should repair it, it is it's needing uh, capital for it to be usable again. Next is higher insurance premiums as a result of victimization, where it is specifically related or mas madali nating relate yung mga crimes destructive arson or arson na malakihan talaga ang nawawala. Installing security measures. So, mga biktima, takot na yan. So, mag-employ sila ng security wherein security measures, pwede silang bumili ng kung ano ng mga protective measures like CCTV and also security guards. So, yun. So, gastos yun. Accessing health services. Of course, kapag may sugat ka, may gasgas ka pala yung paggamot mo. Medical expenses, magbabayad ka sa hospital. Participating in the criminal justice system, for example, traveling to court, childcare, and attending the trial. A waste of money. It is very expensive. No? Yung bayad mo sa abogado, pag-travel mo, pamasahe, sa mga akusado, include na yung mga pagpapakain sa mga testigo. Then, obtaining professional counseling to come to terms with emotional impact. So, ilang libre na ngayon. Taking time off work or from their other income generating activities. So, pag ikaw ay napinsala, na biktima, hindi ka makakapagtrabaho. That is the financial consequence. Funeral or burial experiences for the death victim, wherein it is applicable for the family na natira. In some cases, such as stalking, victim may feel a need to move a process like to incur financial costs. Also, property value may diminish as a result of violent crime occurring to the house. Siyempre, pagka ikaw naman may paligid-ligid, baka gustuhin mo na rin na lumipat sa ibang tahanan. Now, let us proceed to psychological impact. That is psychological consequences of victimization. It is almost impossible to predict how an individual will respond to crime. Psychological injuries created by crime are often the most difficult to cope with and have long-lasting injuries created by crime or it has or have a long-lasting effect. As a crime is usually experienced as more serious than an accident or misfortune, it is difficult to come to terms with the fact that the loss and injury have been caused by deliberate act of another human being. Common reaction to crime can be split. The initial reaction may include shock, fear, anger, helplessness, disbelief and guilt, yung mga nasabi kanina sa emotional. Pagdating sa psychological, pwede itong lumala. So, yun ay po pwedeng pwede mabago yung emotional consequence or pwedeng emotional problems ng tao. Pwedeng lumala. And then it is psychological consequences. So, a period of disorganization may follow this initial reaction. This phase may manifest itself in psychological effects such as distressing thoughts about the events, nightmares, panaginip, depression, guilt, fear, and loss of confidence and esteem. Life can seem to slow down and become meaningless. Previously held beliefs and faiths may no longer provide comfort. Other behavioral responses might include increased alcohol or substance abuse, fragmentation of social relationship, avoidance of people and situations associated with the crime, and social withdrawal. Those are the psychological consequences. The best example is that stress now. When a person is under great stress, as many people are who are victimized, he or she may have more difficulty than usual thinking clearly, keeping their emotions under control, staying physically healthy, or behaving appropriately in social situations. The trauma of being a crime victim can definitely impact on a person's ability to function. And for the social consequences, it is also known as secondary victimization. Secondary victimization refers to the victimization which occurs not as a direct result of the criminal act, but through the response of institutions and individuals to the victim. In the Philippines, if the victims died or the actual offended party dies, the nearest relative are the one going to respond or be affected. If there is no other people surrounding him, the institution like the police to initiate the action of prosecution and the pillars of criminal justice. So the following are the few examples of secondary victimization. First, the refusal to recognize their experience as criminal victimization or the recognition. Hindi ayaw nila. Nagre-refuse silang na maano yung kanilang experience. So, intrusive or inappropriate conduct by police or other criminal justice personnel. So, nagkakaroon ng pagbabago for the types of victimization that the victim may react. No? on such, and that is the consequences is baka lalong ma-aggravate yung tao, may humiliate because of the inappropriate conduct by police officer. Third, the whole process of criminal investigation and trial, the decision about whether or not to prosecute the trial itself, the sentencing of the offender, and his or her eventual release. Fourth, the victim perceives difficulties in balancing the rights with those accused or the offender. Criminal justice process and procedures do not take the perspective of the victim into account. Relatives may have restricted access to the body of loved one due to hospital policies and procedures. Kalimitan ito nangyayari sa social consequences is that pag namatay yung biktima, hindi ka palapitin sa crime scene kahit na yung emosyon mo ay sumasabog na dahil naawa ka o napapaya ka. So that is the social consequences. Another one is the hurried schedule of emergency room may affect a sexual assault victim's privacy or sense of dignity. Then we have school personnel may discount child disclosure of abuse, and doctors may not acknowledge signs of spouse abuse. Spiritual leaders may attempt to guide victims into paths of forgiveness or accommodations before they are ready or against their wishes. Instructive or inappropriate investigation and filming, photographing, and reporting by the media. So, may social consequences yung mga yan. So, actually, the heading is wrong. No, it is to all for the victimization. So, mahalaga po ito na it is important to remember that victims do not choose to be victimized. We don't want to become a victim. We don't want to suffer, right? Sexual assault victims do not choose to be raped. Sino ba ka naman? Parents do not raise their children to be murdered. And women do not get married to be abused. Remember also that becoming a victim of a crime is unpleasant and unwanted life experience at best. The emotional, physical, psychological, and financial ramification, or such in the cognitive, affective, and behavioral ramification of crime can be devastating to victims. So, remember that with those consequences that may be devastating to victims, always coping with and recovering from victimization are very complex. Sadly, nakakalungkot po na ang mga victims may never be able to do so. Ayun po ang problema. So that's all the ends of my report. I hope that you learn from my report. And again, I'm sorry for not being there. I hope you understand my situation. And good day and God bless to all of you. Thank you very much po.